On this edition of the program, Tom LoBianco joins the show to talk about the professionalizing Republican Party and the people that are mad about it. And we ask the very, very dark and macabre question for the first and only time all election. What happens if Trump or Biden die? It's all coming up. Hello and welcome, everybody, to the Politics program for March 20th, 2024. Your old pal, Justin Robert Young, coming to you. And we're going to post this a little bit early because we will not have the results of the Republican primary in Ohio. Dolan, Moreno, LaRose, all that will be covered later in the week. But we're going to begin in a weird place because I don't like to talk about death. It's a speculation. It's a constant in all of our lives. And to be totally honest with you, I hope that modern medicine and science can conquer it before my bill comes due. But there is a lot of speculation on the fact that the candidates who are running for president in this election are, well, old. Donald Trump is 77. Joe Biden is 81. They will be 78 and 82 by the time that they were sworn in for their second and final terms. That is, for both of them, over the 77 years of age that an average American is expected to live. It is, of course, natural to think of scenarios where either survive to see the end of their second and final term. But I don't like talking about death in this scenario, in this show, in the world of political analysis, because it's really, really hard to predict. Not to mention macabre. So here are the top two reasons why I don't factor it into any of the analysis that I have done. Number one, we have no immediate reason beyond advanced age to assume that they're going to drop dead by November. And number two, deaths of political figures at this stage are not only tragic, they're unpredictable. We can't know for sure how the political party, state parties, secretaries of state, or the electorate will react to world-shaking news events that quite simply haven't happened. And yet, I probably get asked some version of this question once a week. And so, with a bit of a lull in the calendar, we kick off our long, hot, sweaty summer of democracy with a little bit of goth. So let's understand where we are right now. As I am recording this, Joe Biden has 2,107 delegates. 1,968 are needed to win the Democratic Party nomination, essentially meaning that he has already cinched it. Donald Trump has 1,273 delegates. 1,215 are needed to win the Republican Party's nomination. He has similarly clinched it. So, if one of the two died and a candidate were to inherit that full block of candidates, obviously they would then be the nominee. But we have no idea if this could happen because there ain't a whole lot of case studies on this. So what's going to follow in this segment is a combination of historical record, attempting to retrofit similar events from the past into the present, and fan fiction. So let's start with Biden. In our modern political world, there is only one incumbent president who died on the campaign trail.
The priest who were with Kennedy, the two priests who were with Kennedy say that he is dead of his bullet wounds. That seems to be about as close to official as we can get at this time. They did see the president just a few moments ago, and this is the bulletin that has just cleared from Dallas, that the two priests who were in the emergency room where President Kennedy lay after being taken from the Dallas street corner where he was shot say that he is dead.
So this brings us to one of the many gross moments that will exist in the next several minutes, that the history of presidential politics in America, specifically anything close to our modern system, we don't have a whole lot of lessons on sudden heart attacks or strokes taking presidents or presidential candidates out of the race. By far, the most likely way that death strikes a campaign is assassination. And since all of this is guesswork, the best way that we can start is to start there. That, of course, was Walter Cronkite announcing to the nation that President John F. Kennedy was dead in 1963. A lot of people don't realize that that fateful day of November 22nd was the beginning of Kennedy's 1964 re-election campaign. His barnstorming of Texas, designed to try to bring together a party that was fracturing in that state over civil rights. Now, the primary system in 1964 is only slightly evolved from the very, very just emerging from the ooze version that Kennedy took advantage of in 1960 to become the president, meaning that there still weren't enough delegates in 1964 to win the nomination, but you could get enough of a head of steam that making a convention fight would pretty much lean in your favor if you were able to go through the primary system without losing. That's what JFK did in 60, and that's pretty much where the system is in 1964. That would be if there were not an incumbent president, which is what JFK was, which means that there would be absolutely no challengers that would have any kind of a shot at taking out Kennedy in the convention. Or at least there weren't at that time. Hold that thought for 1968. But more importantly, we do know what happened after Kennedy was killed. The nation mourned the death of their leader. We know that Lyndon Baines Johnson became the commander-in-chief. We know that he used his time between the swearing in and the election of 1964 to build a formidable legislative record, including the Civil Rights Act. And we know he deeply believed that America didn't want a third president within a calendar year. And he was right. Johnson defeated Arizona Senator Barry Goldwater in 1964. So, what do these lessons tell us about our modern day? Well, obviously, we do need to understand that how Joe Biden would die matters. If it's an act of political violence, like fell Kennedy, the nation would rally around him. And it would be hard to reframe the race on conventional lines, especially considering that Joe Biden has spent so much of this campaign up till now, and the Democratic Party has spent so much of its time for the last 8 years discussing the unique danger of Donald Trump to the fabric of America. But let's say he suffers a sudden medical condition. I assume that there would be similar initial sympathy, but depending on when it happens and whether or not he is just stepping out of the race or if he is actually dead, I do think that, let's say, a cancer scare or a stroke that leads to him being incapacitated, that would be something that I do think we'd probably wind up getting back to some level of equilibrium. He would not be the first presidential candidate to spend time in the hospital on the campaign trail. Richard Nixon in 1960 did the same thing, and all he did was slam his knee into a car door. But if he's dead, that means that Kamala Harris is the first black woman president. Much has been written about how unpopular Kamala Harris is. As of this writing, she's only 37% approved of and 42% disapproved of by national average. That is worse right now than Joe Biden, just barely. I don't believe that if she were to become president in a horrifying scenario that we have just painted, that would continue to be the case. The nation would see Harris as literally holding the government together, a linchpin during transformational times. She would address the nation. She would address Congress. She would be the most visible American on the world stage. Politically, like LBJ did in the aftermath of JFK, she would have the political will to reframe the priorities of the White House. It's not hard to imagine Kamala making Ukraine aid sail through Congress in the same way that Johnson railroaded civil rights through Congress in 1963. She would be the recipient of a rally around the flag moment. Like George Bush after 9/11, the highest approval rating ever given to a president, or Trump in the 15 days to stop the spread era of COVID, which is his highest popularity. Well, they might not last forever, but it will be a halo that will probably carry to the division bell moment of this contest. Again, this is a really, really gross subject, and there's a reason why I avoid it. But if Joe Biden were to die, Kamala Harris would be the prohibitive favorite to win the White House. And there is no question in my mind about that. So, let's take a look at Trump. We don't really have to move far in our timeline to find a comparison. No, only 4 years later, in 1968. Lyndon Baines Johnson is not as light on his feet as Joe Biden was in the newly empowered primary system and finds himself trailing two other candidates. And so, on March 31st, not far from where we are on the calendar right now, in an election year, he quits the race. LBJ supports his Vice President Hubert Humphrey and moves the delegates' pledge to support him to support Humphrey. That's important. Now, it's too late for Humphrey to run in any of the primaries, so he sits on the sideline with a wealth of delegates and prepares for a floor fight against LBJ's nemesis, Bobby Kennedy, father of current presidential candidate RFK Jr., brother of John and Ted, former attorney general, and at that time, current senator from New York. And then, while campaigning in Los Angeles in July of 1968, a gunman, Sirhan Sirhan, murders him. When later interviewed about the act, Sirhan told journalist David Frost that Kennedy died because he supported the state of Israel. And Sirhan did it for his country of Palestine.
This is a CBS News special report. Here is CBS News correspondent Harry Reasoner.
Good evening. The body of Senator Robert Kennedy is now in the air in a jet furnished by the White House and the Air Force, heading for New York from Los Angeles. It left there a little bit before 4:30 New York time this afternoon. It will land at LaGuardia Airport in New York. The body will be brought to St. Patrick's Cathedral, arriving sometime around 9:30 New York time tonight. Tomorrow from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., and longer if there are lines there, it will lie in state before a Requiem Mass at 10 a.m. Saturday, then to go by train from New York to Washington, and in a motor procession from New York's Union Station to go by the Senate Office Building and by the Justice Department, where Robert Kennedy served as Attorney General, before burial at about 5:30 Saturday afternoon in the same plot where President John Kennedy lies.
2.5 months later, the Democrats meet for their convention in Chicago. At the time, this was the delegate count at the convention. Humphrey, taking the delegates that were pledged to LBJ, had 561 and a half. Bobby Kennedy, having been the favorite on the campaign trail, had 393.5, and Eugene McCarthy had 258. There's obviously a lot more about this convention, but we're not doing a deep dive on that. Raise the Dead Season 3, hopefully coming soon. But Kennedy's delegates were released, and most found a home with Humphrey. He earned the nomination in a very chaotic circumstance. He would go on to lose to Richard Nixon. So, let's retrofit this on to our modern world. The same thing happens to Donald Trump. Let's say the architect of the Abraham Accords earns him the same bullet to the head that Bobby Kennedy got. That would mean that enough delegates to clinch the nomination would also be released. Again, we're trying to retrofit rules that existed in 1968 for the Democrats, 2024 for the Republicans. We have no guarantee that that would be the case, but let's say that it is. And now all of a sudden, very close to the convention, after the primary process, we basically have a bunch of unpledged delegates that can all go wherever the hell they want. Like the Democratic Party of the late 60s, the Republican Party of the 2020s is in flux. We have shifting coalitions. There exists no figure but Trump that can marshal the largest coalition. In his absence, there would be a wild power vacuum. This would be more intense than 1968, in my opinion, because at the very least then, you had the sitting vice president that was there for a security blanket, no matter how mad everybody at that convention got about it. Here, boy, who's the establishment? Who's the insurgent? I assume you'd see many of the names that we heard during the primaries, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis. They would probably step up to claim the crown, but nobody is a veteran in multi-ballot convention process, which I would very much assume would be what happens, especially this late in the game. Now, depending on who emerges, if Trump were assassinated, I do think that there would be a rally around the flag for him. I think even the most callous among us, maybe not Keith Olbermann, but most of America would be sad that he got shot and killed. But I don't know if it would guarantee victory for his successor, because they're not Trump. And if there's one thing that we know about our modern electoral world is that Trumpism without Trump is not a guarantee. I would compare what we would see to probably akin to the multi-day fight that we had decided the Speaker of the House not once, but twice over the last 12 months. And you'd probably see some of those same names throw themselves into the ring. And you'd probably wind up with somebody more like Mike Johnson, who doesn't have as many enemies as you would somebody like Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis, who does. There is nobody in the GOP who could replace Trump, in my opinion, in this scenario. And aside from never Trump voters, there's not much reframing that would benefit from somebody other than Trump in the party. So in that case, I think that the Republican chances for the presidency would be fragile. But of course, all of this is gross, macabre, vulture speculation. Hopefully you all feel appropriately disgusting for asking me about it for months and months and months. And whenever anybody asks, Justin, what do you think would happen if one or both of them die? I can now refer them to this episode. And with that, we resume our regularly scheduled programming. This is your update brought to you by TakePoliticsSeriously.com. If you would like to support this program, then please head on over to TakePoliticsSeriously.com. That is where at the $3 level, price of a cup of coffee each week, you can get 2 bonus podcasts of this show each and every week. And I got to tell you, we're in the season where you want it. On the Sunday show, where we go over all of what was said on the Sunday shows, which I have always told you is not about what's really happening, but it is Washington, D.C. talking to itself. Boy, were there a lot of tea leaves around the TikTok ban. If you are interested in that legislation, I would highly recommend that you go listen to these politicians in their own words about the TikTok ban. Because even the rare person who did not vote for the House bill, boy, did they have a lot of caveats. It did change my opinion on how likely that legislation is to pass. Get my full thoughts on that. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. Our $3 level gets you 2 bonus podcasts each and every week. That's only one of the 2 that patrons are going to get. Speaking of that, members of the Senate Commerce and Intelligence Committees will get a classified briefing Wednesday about TikTok and the House passed bill to force its sale, according to 2 aides with direct knowledge of the briefing. This via Punchbowl. The closed-door meeting will be hosted by Commerce Committee Chair Maria Cantwell and Intelligence Committee Chair Mark Warner, both Democrats. And Cantwell is not for this bill. Warner is. The briefers include officials from the Justice Department, the FBI, and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. Notably, Cantwell and Warner are on opposite sides of this issue. Separately, administration officials will be briefing Senate aides about the TikTok bill on Tuesday, sources added. This will include senior Justice Department officials who have been central to the Biden administration's messaging effort on TikTok as a national security threat. Something is gumming this up. I don't know if it's the Senate. I don't know if it's the White House. Everybody on their face seems to think that this is a run it up the flagpole. Let's go. There's not a lot of loud objections to it. Now, I do think there's a natural reticence for the Senate to immediately take up anything that the House sends because, the Senate looks at the House like it's a slightly evolved Shoney's. But nobody's really fired up about looking after TikTok right now. And I wonder what the reporting is going to be and what the quotes are going to be on Wednesday after that briefing. That's something that we're going to cover in our patron exclusive episode on Thursday. Former Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan has officially declined a 2024 presidential bid under the No Labels Party, the organization striving to establish a unity ticket against the anticipated Donald Trump versus Joe Biden rematch. Duncan, a Republican, praised No Labels for their efforts to present Americans with an alternative choice, but has chosen to focus on reforming the GOP to support more, quote, common sense conservative candidates. I'm going to translate that for you. Somebody in the Republican Party said, what the hell are you doing? You're young. You're in a swing state. Why are you throwing your entire Republican career away? And he said, you want to know what? That's a pretty good idea. I have no idea why I'm throwing my entire Republican career away. Duncan's decision follows a series of rejections from other candidates like Nikki Haley, Larry Hogan, and Joe Manchin, signaling challenges for No Labels in securing a notable nominee despite gaining ballot access in multiple states. No Labels' initiative to launch a bipartisan presidential ticket highlights the growing dissatisfaction with voters, especially with a Trump and Biden matchup, but it has yet to find a candidate, and it's starting to get a little stinky that they have not. I'm just saying, people have been joking about LOL more like the no candidates party, and it's starting to look a little true. Part of why? They don't have ballot access in all 50 states. In fact, as of now, it's only 17. And finally, as we celebrate a birthday here on this fine show, C-SPAN turns 45 as I record this, March 19th, a run that notably began with Representative Albert Gore extolling the virtues of bringing television access to the people's chamber. As any true political junkie knows, C-SPAN is powered by cable, a network funded by what was once the greatest deal in media, the cable bundle. You paid one price to a carrier that negotiated deals with channels. It didn't matter what you watched, it mattered what you paid for. Therefore, the cable bills were pretty high, but the cable companies made a lot of money. And part of that money went to C-SPAN. But nothing that profitable can last forever. Since 2016, cable subscriptions have declined by over 15 million households. And that means C-SPAN, a media company dedicated to politics, which for 4.5 decades, in my opinion, has stood alone as remaining truly nonpartisan in hyper-partisan times, faces an uncertain future. Now, I always appreciate you guys supporting this show, but I want to look you in the eye and tell you that if you like what we try to do, if you like politics the way it used to be, at least in terms of political analysis, I do my best to try to remain an honest judge for your benefit. It would be a lot easier to put on a red jersey, put on a blue jersey, and have a home team. But the pathway that allowed me a career, in my opinion, is paved by C-SPAN. They are the common denominator in all of political media. And with their funding, let's say, not quite as certain as it was in some of the previous decades, I would encourage you, as I did this morning, to head to donate.cspan.org. They are looking to raise $42,000. And for what we get, especially in the world of political junkies, they send cameras to all of these events. They continue to broadcast out of the House and the Senate. And their archives, transcribed archives, are second to none. Head on over there right now. Donate.cspan.org. In my opinion, it is money very, very, very well spent. And happy birthday to everybody at C-SPAN. Now, let's back to the show. And now, let's get back to the show. Joining us back on the program is our new best friend, 24 Sight's national political reporter, Tom LoBianco. Welcome back to the show, Tom.
Hey, Justin. Thanks for having me back.
So you just recently wrote on 24 Sight that there is a new regime that has come into the RNC. And as with any situation where a bunch of people get fired, some people are really, really mad about it. So tell us, what have you found?
Well, this regime change, like other regime changes around the world, seems to be about as much kicking out one Republican Party establishment and replacing it, not with MAGA, not with Trumpified, hyperbole, but in fact an even older version of the GOP establishment. So we wrote over it, it's myself and my colleague Warren Rojas at 24 site. We broke the news late Friday about how this new staff at the Republican National Committee, under the direction of Trump campaign co-chairman Chris LaCivita, is very Bushy, very Romney, very NRSC, very McConnell-esque. They brought in, and all, I should note here too, this is all in service of raising a lot of money for Trump, who clearly needs a lot of money right now.
Yes.
That's we get to that one. I'll tell you, there's a number of compounding factors on that. Not just $500 million in legal fines.
Yeah. But so let me just ask you this. So number one, it seems that right now, if something is working for Trump 2024 in a way that it didn't work in 16 and it didn't work in 20, is that there is a professionalization here. And it is shockingly kind of taking advantage of what the Republican establishment used to have over the Democratic establishment, which was that the Democrats did this kind of stuff all the time, where a new warlord would come in.
Yep.
You eliminate all of the old vassals. You kill their children. You salt their land. And now we are the new kings of the castle until the next warlord king comes in and the cycle repeats. The strength for the Republicans was at some point when your father, who was in the Republican Party, gave you a number when you were 1, and then you waited, and at some point you became either a certain ranking member of the Republican Party or you got a chance to run for president. It was a very orderly line that existed pretty much until 2016, and it sounds like some of that stability is what is coming back to the RNC, but that means that there's a lot of MAGA folks who wrote in with the warlord saying, wait a minute, I thought we were the new establishment.
Right? They're like, hey, man, you put us at the front of the battering ram and smashed us against the gates. And I talked with a number of the original Trumpers back when it was the Island of Misfit Toys, and now it's really a Bush remix. Those folks, the Island of Misfit Toys, were telling me, look, they can't take the MAGA title. These people are swamp creatures.
Yeah.
And that's true. I mean, Chris LaCivita, part of the reason it is so highly professionalized and so highly polished, it's the reason you have this jarring dichotomy where, on the one hand, the former president of the United States promises a bloodbath, maybe about China, maybe another January 6th. There's a lot of ambiguity.
Well, you want to know what? I actually have a problem with the Biden team with this, because they hammered that home over the weekend, right? That he says, okay, there's these things in China, or China's building EV factories in Mexico. They're going to come back. To me, it was pretty clear he was talking about the auto industry, because in the grand scheme of wild Donald Trump quotes, it was not particularly wild for me. The next day, he has his if you don't vote for me, you ain't black moment, but with Jewish voters, where he says, if you vote for the Democrats, then you hate your religion. And that's the problem with elevating 3s and 4s of Donald Trump quotes to 11s, is that we just spent 48 hours pulling our hair out, and Joe Scarborough is blowing out his lav mic in his living room in Palm Beach, screaming obscenities at 6:15 in the morning. And then when something that could actually, although it does unfortunately mirror a gaffe that your candidate had 4 years ago, but it was actually something that I think could have traction, you kind of, it's hard to stay at 11 the entire time. I think that's the opportunity cost that they lose when everything turns into, oh my God, I can't believe he said it.
Trump, and I'll tell you, man, Trump as a tactician is unmirrored. He gets it. His ability to read things. Strategy, personally, Trump might not be the best. But in terms of flipping back and forth on TikTok, that one, again back to what we originally were talking about here, for the money.
Yep.
All right, that's, bring in Jeff Yass, Club for Growth. But yeah, I thought about that when, when you hear it in, the clip, it's like, it sounds pretty clear. Well, I mean, what he says is clear that he promises a bloodbath if he's not elected. Now, what does that mean? And the answer is, okay, the Biden campaign, and a lot of people took that to mean another January 6th, which is unsurprising because he just had the January 6th choir, and he's like, you people are hostages. He's like, I'm your salvation. Right?
He opens every rally with that. So for those of you who are unaware, it went number 1 on iTunes or whatever, Apple Music when it first came out. But it is a hybrid of America. What is it? It's the Pledge of Allegiance and no, but it's a remix. It's a club banger if the club is Detention Block C in DC. But it is a bunch of January 6th prisoners and Donald Trump intermixed together.
And then he does the feint. You can see the boxing gloves behind me. He throws shoulder like he's going to throw a jab, and then throws the cross. He's like, but actually, Gina. Yeah. And you're like, oh, okay, auto car manufacturing. All right, I gotcha. They didn't really. What does it actually mean? Who knows? And that's Trump.
I don't know. I think the bloodbath thing, I don't have a whole lot of question about. If you look at the clip, he's using hyperbole, which Trump is wont to do. Oh, this is my new impression. Yeah. I'm gonna run this by you because you've watched a lot of Trump. So I'm working. I've tried to get good at the Trump, but the new thing I'm obsessed with is when he clearly goes to teleprompter. So he'll do stuff, and that's how you knew that he was just riffing when he's like, because he's very staticato when he's riffing, and that's where the bloodbath thing came from, where it was like it's gonna be bad, it'll be a bloodbath, it'll be the worst, that'll be the least of it. But then when he goes to teleprompter, he goes very sing-songy and he goes very rapid fire. So there'll be like an exhale. He'll be like, the radical left Democrats and their associates in the media have gone too far. There's that 1 minute where it just immediately starts flowing.
This is really good.
Just the key is the radical left Democrats. That's what brings you right. The radical left Democrats and their friends in the media.
On the teleprompter when it says insert transition here, he's like radical left Democrats.
Yeah. Scroll. He's on the teleprompter.
You think someone was screwing with him on the teleprompter when he did that one about what was it, Argentina, or I can't remember. It was like a couple weeks ago, one of the final actual primaries that happened in North Carolina, and he's like something border.
Yeah. Who knows? Although that's to go back to Las Vegas. So this is part of like what you have seen. And again, so much coverage goes to Donald Trump, the man. So much coverage has rightly gone to Donald Trump's financial situation. But underneath the surface here is a real, reuniting of Pangea of a lot of things that kind of used to be the Republican Party.
Yes.
There wasn't a ton of ink spilled that all of a sudden there's no more old crow Mitch McConnell. No, now it's thank you, Mitch. Thank you, Mitch. Let's win in November, Mitch. Now all of a sudden he's not running his own people against Club for Growth. He's not running his own people against the National Republican Senatorial Committee. He ran Matt Rosendale not only out of the primary in Montana, he ran him out of government. Like Matt Rosendale was going to run for Senate, then was going to run for the representative, and for whatever the rumors that are dancing around Washington as to what happened with all of that, he's now not going to run for anything. So you've seen a lot more discipline there. Yeah. Really, the last kind of fracture is, as we're recording this Ohio primary, where you do have different factors of the Republican coalition playing against each other. But is it a surprise to see, pretty much all but the kind of Nikki Haley, Mike Pence elements of this party sort of coalesce behind him as early as they have?
No. And I'll tell you why. So a couple things. That Nikki Haley, Mike Pence crowd, however you want to coin them, and I hold them distinct from Never Trump, because Never Trump is really its own thing. Nikki Haley is Charleston and Columbia, South Carolina. It's not the outlying counties. She's the old Marco Rubio coalition, and that's a lot of the upper middle class, educated, as they say, wine track, not the beer track. Pence is what you might call with absolutely no apologies to Ted Cruz, because that was a terrible campaign in 2016, but he is what you might call principled conservatism. Yes. Because if you listen to what his answer was regarding not endorsing Trump, he did say it was, oh yes, because you tweeted a target on my back while my family was there, and your rioters were trying to kill us with the impromptu gallows. But also because you're not standing firm on abortion, not standing firm on trade, not standing firm on the principles of the Reagan coalition inside the party. And that also too applies. And there's a lot of crossover between Haley and Pence in terms of foreign policy hawkishness surrounding Ukraine, some other areas, China, fittingly enough. But there is a very distinct nexus here in terms of why you see some members of the old establishment here coming back in with them, and particularly with these McConnell Senate ties. I wrote about this for Yahoo probably 5 years ago, back in 2019, which, wow, I say that now and I realize it's 5 years ago.
Time flies.
2019 was when it's funny. It's back at the beginning. It's after the 2018. Let's go into time travel here. After the 2018 midterms, that was the first real concerns people inside the Republican Party had with Trump and his ability to win. And one of the main problems they had was they put so much money into this, and Democrats outperformed their expectations. Yes. in that midterm. So, for a long time, you had a number of Republicans who had been pushing to, this is the prequel, this is the Star Wars episodes 1, 2, and 3. We'll call this one the Phantom Menace.
There we go, okay.
The best of the three. You can skip the other two.
Different conversation. Different conversation. Apologies to Dexter Jetster, but go ahead. The Republican, the establishment and the money class, the mega donors, had for years been getting on the RNC and eventually Trump, because he was the one in office when this became too big of an issue for them, to create a Republican version of ActBlue. And of course, ActBlue, is this small dollar online fundraising powerhouse for the Democrats, left of center, liberal groups, progressive movement, which had been around for since 2004, since Kerry, created in the aftermath of Kerry. And you look at, and they said, well, we're tired of giving all this money and losing. Why don't you start working on the small dollar donors? And to be very clear for people, the big thing with ActBlue, which is a very well run app and has been at the forefront of a lot of subscription based donating, which is something that they very much helped pioneer, especially in the mobile space. But the big deal isn't that app exists, because there's plenty of online places that do it. Yes. What matters is that the DNC blessed it and said, this is officially where you go when you want to do this. That gives the blessing. And there were a couple competing apps in this time frame, if memory serves, on which would get the GOP blessing.
Yes, Antidote, by the way, was the big one that was being used, and their fees were quite low. It's the equivalent of a credit card swipe fee, like Stripe when it gets processed. and I did a number of stories for this for Yahoo. The people that were pushing Trump on this were Sheldon Adelson. He was still around back then.
Yep.
And Chuck Schwab, personal finance guy, Charles Schwab. And there are a few others. And, you know, the funny thing is the original, so they went to the White House and told Trump, you know, you got to come up with this. Like, we're just done cutting limitless checks for you. You know, you need to find something. So I remember there was this group that came up with it, including it was Katie Walsh and Mike Shields were working with this, and used to be a longtime RNC staffer, Garrett Lansing, who ran a lot of digital over there, and he was kind of the brains of this operation. And of course, Josh Holmes, who was Mitch McConnell's guy.
Yep.
And that's a core group. And you know, the funny thing is the original idea that they came up with, and Jared Kushner, of course, being the actual shadow president inside that White House, was tasked with overseeing it. And the first name they came up with was Patriot Pass, and you were going to sign up for Patriot Pass.
Okay.
And Bob Kraft got wind of this and said, "No, you're not calling it Patriot." Anything.
Oh, like Patriot, the New England Patriots. He didn't want his name on that. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The Pats are going to have nothing to do with this.
No. Nor will anybody passing Brady, Zappy, Jones, or anybody that they might draft.
You know, so they renamed it. Then they renamed it WinRed, and that is the official one now. Well, if you look at the group that's coming back in there now, there's a lot of connections to that WinRed crowd.
Yeah.
You know, so La Savita. And I have to say too, and we get at this in the story. It's a lot of it's actually coalition building going on, as you mentioned with Pangea.
Yeah.
La Savita oversees that crowd, kind of that WinRed money crowd, the mixing of McConnell, the RNC, and Trump, and the Trump White House, like that world. And you know, big person that they brought in was Charlie Spees. Charlie's GOP super lawyer, big time fundraiser, used to be a top lawyer for Ron DeSantis, top fundraiser for him. I mean, he has been around for forever. And they brought back Sean Cairncross to the RNC, and Cairncross has some deep ties in the McConnell world and the RNC. But you know, they also brought in Susie Wiles, who's a longtime Republican operative. Again, another establishment operative now working with Trump. You know, Susie details one of her deputies over there. His name is James Blair. So that's a member of the Susie part of this. So you got the two campaign co-chairs, La Savita and Susie Wiles. They both have their people in there. And Laura Trump, member of the family, daughter-in-law, Eric Trump's wife, goes over there.
Rumored Senate candidate, and now has a nice plum spot there at the RNC under Michael Whatley, right?
Yeah. I'm sure you remember when she was being floated for the 22 cycle.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, and that was a really interesting question, mostly because throughout that entire process, and 22 probably, I think, was the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of, can a Trumpless MAGA win elections? And the answer pretty resoundingly seemed to be no. They can't really pick them, nor can they really win with them. That there are some real limitations with the Herschel Walker and Dr. Oz's of the world, and unless you are working with either a very favorable map like J.D. Vance was, and I do think that J.D. Vance was a cut above Oz and Walker specifically, but you know, it's hard. It's hard for that Trump brand. The Trump brand is good at the pizzazz. They're good at the show. They're good at the sizzle. They're good at the sparkle. They're good at the earned media. They're not great at blocking and tackling. They're not great at fundraising when it's not Donald Trump there, and they're certainly not good at the X's and O's of running the campaign, which we saw with both of the with both of the other candidates. I have no idea. I just got a new Mac,
That's awesome.
and for YouTube people, that point was so fire. Literal fireworks went off behind me.
It's amazing you're still alive right now.
Exactly. I know. I got to figure out a way to turn that off.
Just call you Senator Tester with your fingers blown off.
A real Jason Pierre-Paul situation on our hands right here, or at least part of it. But yeah, so it seems like now there is a realization both from the Trump side and from the more establishment side that there's not really a lot gained by the fussing and a feuding. The establishment side is going to make more money if Donald Trump gets pushed over the finish line, and Donald Trump doesn't see the juice in establishing that he's outside of the establishment. That's pretty much baked in.
You gotta, and this kind of goes to the coalition. You have to run a dual track here. You need to shake the money tree, and the money said, "Yeah, no, we're not with losing. We don't like that."
Yes,
and that was a repeated argument. That was the whole premise, or it was one of the many premises of Ron DeSantis. But the flip side of that is, and again, it's amazing to me how much of I've always thought this since Trump first ran back in 2015, since he launched. I remember I was listening to his stuff, and then you listen to what he was talking about. And you've been covering conservative politics and Republican politics for a while. You kind of you catch it. You understand what it is. I'm like, well, God, this guy just put extreme in front of it. It's like, remember back in like the 90s, like when everything like became neon.
Extreme, yeah, exactly, yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is the same thing that everyone else is talking about, except it's extreme.
Yeah.
And that's kind of this dual track. He has to keep the base engaged, which is why you need the face of Laura Trump out there. Yeah. And Donald Trump Jr. going out there and saying the Republican Party is dead. Yeah. And it's like, oh, okay. But not really.
It's cool to say on a podcast and a great breakout clip on Rumble. But in reality, they need the Republican Party to be very competent and very profitable in terms of fundraising, because there's a lot of mouths that are going to need to be fed between now and then. And meanwhile, you've got a huge enthusiasm gap that is on the Republican side right now, but a very competent and very digitally focused Democratic side that is supporting Joe Biden, which a lot of people are about to get the $30 million ad buy that is going to start airing during March Madness, where you're going to see Joe Biden, this Joe Biden ad where they have the fake Pixar outtake at the end where he is making a hilarious joke and walking off camera. Like you're going to see that a lot. Because they are putting it on every channel that airs March Madness, and anybody who is a college basketball fan knows that you see the same 7 ads over and over and over and over and over again. You are going to see that, and that's something that right now the Trump campaign can't afford to do.
No, they really can't. Yeah, they really. There's as in so many things with Trump, it's just built on dichotomies. On the one hand, we say lean and mean, and the official spin is that they haven't been spending a lot, not doing a lot of staff. But then if you listen to the official spin on what's happening, the on-the-record statements on what's happening at the Republican National Committee, it's that, oh, we already have all of this because we're so highly organized, and we don't need this staff because that would be redundant. Yeah. So it's either lean and mean or we have a highly developed organization.
Let me ask you this from your ear to the ground, hearing the chatter. There was a lot made in the conservative echo chamber about scandal within the RNC, and this has been going on for well over a year, but it kind of hit a crescendo with a report out of Red State that showed some the reports of what the RNC was spending their money on. There were some eye-popping line items, like more money spent on fruit than there was on GOTV, get out the vote technologies, especially especially side by side with the DNC, which was spending just in raw dollars a lot more. That have you heard of just frustration from within the RNC on why some of this is a bloodbath?
You know, God, it's so funny. I mean, you cover this stuff so long, and then you kind of get used to it that you start rolling your eyes at it when you hear it because
everyone's constantly knifing everybody.
It reminds me so much, when I started in covering politics, I was covering the Maryland State House, and if people, the nastiest fights are often the intra-party fights.
Oh yeah.
And, I remember there's this famous story out of Annapolis when the old Governor William Donald Schaefer, a legendary figure in Maryland politics, who also, by the way, forms about one half of the composite Tommy Carcetti in The Wire.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, it's not all Martin O'Malley. The philandering is kind of built on the Martin O'Malley rumors, I should say.
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, the boyish presentation,
Yes.
but you're saying in terms of the machinations, it's this character.
That's Schaefer. He said, he was very famous. There's a great, oh man, get chills still thinking about it. Richard Ben Kramer back in the 80s wrote this amazing profile of Schaefer. I think it was Esquire. Is the angriest mayor in America. It was so good. It was amazing, just art. He was, man, so good. Here, hold on a second. Let me pull this down. You guys see
sure,
this.
yeah. Let's go.
This is an old friend. Hold on.
We're doing some real reporter
Here we
stuff
go.
here.
That's my boy Fraser.
Oh,
right
there we go.
Fraser Smith. And this is his memoir of the Baltimore. That's his memoir of the Baltimore Sun. He also wrote a great biography of William Donald Schaefer many years ago. Schaefer and Paris Glendenning, the old governor of Maryland, hated each other. And there was a moment back in 2002 where Glendenning, the current governor, and Schaefer was the tax collector, the comptroller. They sat on these biweekly capital improvements projects board, the Board of Public Works. And Glendenning was messing with Schaefer because Schaefer always used to tweak him at these public meetings. So it was during a water drought, and Glendenning turned off the water to the water fountain at the governor's residence that Schaefer's friend had put there as a gift when he was governor.
Yeah.
So to get back at him, Schaefer outed his affair with his deputy chief of staff in a public meeting.
Oh my God.
And I'll tell you, that is at least 95% of why I started covering politics. I heard that story. I was like, oh man, I got to do this.
That's amazing. I've told this story, but just to demonstrate that we are kindred spirits. This is what got me invested in politics before I even got into journalism. I was a Floridian in growing up in South Florida during the 99 and 2000, right? Two very, very eventful years in politics. And so the first was the Lewinsky scandal, which also was the reason why I started going onto the internet. But all of a sudden they print the Star Report in the newspaper. And I'm like, and I know what's going on. So I take it out and I'm reading pornography. I mean, like there is like legit pornography in the newspaper. And I'm a high school sophomore. Like, this is the greatest thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. And as I'm reading, just filth, like absolute. Go back and read the Star Report. Ron DeSantis won't allow it in libraries. Like I'll just put it that way. Like, I have teachers coming up to me, and they're like, "So great that you're staying informed," and I'm like, Politics is the greatest. It's just the greatest. There's nothing like I'm getting credit for reading pornography in school.
Yeah, man.
And everyone's giving me a clap on the back. And then of course 2000 happens and my high school science teacher has to leave class early so he can go look at paper to decide who the leader of the free world is. And I'm like, this is amazing. There's nothing greater than presidential politics and fast forwards, throw it in the oven a couple decades and now we're here.
He was wasn't Clinton when he was getting the blowjob and the historic blowjob in the Oval Office. Wasn't he on the phone with the sugar barons from Florida?
Oh man, you are really testing my Star Report knowledge, but that does sound correct to my ears. Yes, it was during. He couldn't have been on the phone with anybody in government, right? Because the shutdown was on. That was part of the reason why it happened. Was that it was during the shutdown and he was bored. So it might have been.
Isn't that why everything happens?
Yeah, but this maybe the next time that you're on, we'll do a little Star Report trivia and we'll see who can come out. But yeah, no, that was if you look at all of the political infighting to state back on where we were. The political infighting is something that is always interesting to follow, but it is hard to distinguish. So I have no doubt that for all the time that you have gotten on the phone with somebody from the RNC where somebody's going to say, well, who you should really look into, this other person at the RNC who's an absolute crook. And really what I surmise from a lot of the reporting is that this is from people that are obviously very angry. There is a culture in the party of favoritism towards certain contractors and certain donors, which I would say is probably, I don't know how you run a party without there being a little bit of, it's like, even the Food and Drug Administration allows a little bit of rat poop in your food because there's only going to be so much you can make without it. But I guess there is a situation where things can be over the top. And for the RNC, if you look at 2020 and 2022, 2018, at a certain point, you got to put some wins on the board or else people start looking into the books and saying, hey, exactly who are you talking to and what contractors are you working with?
Well, it was interesting because in large part, because I remember, God, it was so funny to think about it now. I was at Yahoo a year ago when there was this big move afoot to kick out Rana at the actual election. After the 2020 midterms, and Harmeet Dillon from California was kind of the candidate of, and I mean, boy, talk about a coalition that can't hold. It was like the candidate of the extreme MAGA, like the January 6th election people, and Bill Palatucci and the old establishment that got burned out by that. And I'm like, well, that's there's no horseshoe there. There's no meeting of the minds on that one.
It was that and like 4 guest bookers on Fox News, because if you were paying attention to conservative media at that time, you would have thought it was a actual battle that was being fought somewhere, and it was 9 people in a California hotel room that were icily staring at each other.
And that's, oh man, it's back then, it was not as much of a problem. And I think, a couple of things here, remember, Rana has been a Trump advisor for a very long time. And she, of the many people in Trump world, right there at the top in terms of her ability to navigate the factions inside of Trump world and really, maintain her own standing. I mean, apostasies that happened. One of them was holding debates. Yeah. That, through the primary. That, for Trump, mind you, that counts as an apostasy. And now, is that an actual apostasy? I don't know. He's not the incumbent. Yeah. It's not an incumbent president, but he's also a former president. What do you do? I don't know. I mean,
I have no idea how you thread the stone needle of a lot of the stuff, up to and including the fact that she's at the center of a party that needs to pick and support candidates, right? And so you have the most popular person in the party that says, I want whoever comes to Mar-a-Lago. If you come to Mar-a-Lago and you have my cell phone number and you call me every night and wish me a good night, then you are going to be in the front of the line for me to pick you. You then have the Mitch McConnell side of the Republican Senatorial Committee. You've got a sub-faction of other folks in the Senate that want Mitch McConnell's job that are asking for stuff. And then you got the Club for Growth, which, depending on how they flip a coin every morning, they're either best friends with Trump or they want Trump dead. And you really have no idea exactly where they're at. It just depends on where we are in the sun and moon cycle.
You know something? So I know, with the Club for Growth thing was really fascinating. And I think this kind of gets to, I saw this too in the Elon Musk interview, that Don Lemon, with all the hullabaloo around that thing.
And
it's actually it's a long running Trump tactic, where he'll insert himself into certain things and then say different multitude of things about what happened. Musk mentioned that Trump dropped in on a breakfast with a bunch of people with him to talk to him about these things. So Trump came to him. Same thing here with regards to the Club for Growth, because it was fascinating. There's two big event spaces down there. There's Mar-a-Lago or the Breakers, and there are tons of charities down there, tons of charity balls. Endless charity balls. You pick one or the other. Club for Growth was having its big event at the Mar-a-Lago.
The Breakers. Yes. Yeah.
And Trump drove down the street to go attend it.
To go to the Breakers. Yeah.
He left Mar-a-Lago to go to the Breakers to shake hands and make amends with David McIntosh. The big blow up in the Ohio Senate primary 2 years prior.
Yep.
As it turned out, also, with the help of Jeff Yass, the TikTok investor.
Sequoia Capital, and now most famous for his TikTok investment, which made Vivek Ramaswamy moonwalk from digital fentanyl to Jake Paul punch me in the balls and maybe we can go viral.
Next Trump cabinet member, not vice president.
No. Vivek might get an ambassadorship in a country without internet. That might be the place where Vivek goes.
And we're not talking about Cincinnati. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Sorry, that was too easy. Too easy.
Exactly.
But they need that. But this overarching theme here, and this is what you see at play with the RNC, is that Trump needs money. They really need money. And, I saw a story, and it's fascinating to see, I would point people back to the Messenger, but the Messenger not only doesn't exist, but the stories don't exist either anymore. So.
But it doesn't. Hopefully, did Archive get it?
It's on everything.
It's somewhere.
On the internet.
Exactly. Okay. Well, somewhere theoretically you could find the following story.
Yeah, I wrote about this last summer, about the concerns with small dollar donors getting pumped way too hard. Yeah. And we were already seeing this. And, I bring this up in the context of is Ronna McDaniel completely to blame for this? Is Donald Trump with his Herschel Walker gun to your head candidates completely to blame for this? Oftentimes it's a technical thing and also cultural. Because remember this, why did the small dollar donors burnt out? Because he kept on going to the well constantly, and over
and not just Trump, Yes, everybody in the Republican Party. Because if you've ever donated to anything right of center, and sometimes often left of center things, you get on these lists. And if you've ever gotten an email or a text message that said, Donald Trump is caught in a well, if you don't give me $50, then he's going to die in this well. Go to the fine print and find out that 5 cents of what you were going to give would go to Donald Trump by legal necessity, and the rest of that money would go to somebody. because somebody was just running these ads that had nothing, these direct mails, these text messages that had nothing to do with them or what they were doing or their locality, their state, their city, their issue, anything. It was, can you believe what's happening to Donald Trump? Money, please? And it worked. But I don't blame. There was a report today that came out and it said, oh, you know, his small dollar donations are slowing down. And we're going to have Dave Leventhal, come on next week to talk a little more about it.
Yes.
But it's like,
Dave's a great dude.
He's the best. He's the best. But I mean, like, I don't blame it. That piñata is not damaged. That piñata is not empty. That piñata has been smashed to the subatomic level. Like, it has been worked so much since 2016. And both Trump and others have been unscrupulous with it. They were really dirty with some of the subscription stuff on it. I don't blame people for not being trusting of it or just saying, hey, look, times are tough. You keep talking about Bidenomics. Guess what I have less money for? Giving money to you.
Yes. Every day is an apocalypse, and here we are, for the last 8 years. Something an old Republican source brought up to me and I thought was very smart. And, again, this gets to this whole assigning blame thing going on.
Yeah.
I wrote about this last summer because I'd been hearing about it from some digital sources for a while and we see it too in the media, obviously, with our revenue falling off, in terms of people just not paying. People are just burnt out in general on it. Small dollars, they knew this already, that this is a problem. It was really in the context of trying to make the stage because a lot of the other candidates, everybody was having problems with that. Everybody had concerns about this, all the different campaigns. But it was also about, in terms of the small dollars, a good digital source brought this up to me and said, it's not just that, it's that you have to invest in list prospecting, that you have to invest in list building. He was telling me that one of the problems that they did was, it was coming in easy, so don't, what's the worry?
Yeah.
And, tell me, because, I work in journalism and God knows that was our industry for 8 years of Trump.
Yep.
We didn't have to do anything, write a tweet. That's,
Trump done did it.
Yeah.
Click.
Yes, exactly.
Boy, did he do it again. A follow-up.
That's right. He said it. No, he didn't say it. We got him on tape saying it. We got him on tape saying he didn't say it on tape.
Yeah.
It all fell off. But also, nobody was doing the infrastructure building, the dry stuff. The boring stuff. Look, that's what we do now over at 24 site. Now that we are in this, you do this with politics. Mm-hmm. This is building audiences, but also taking care of audiences. Yeah. Not going back all the time and saying, this is the most important thing ever, because guess what? People are not automatons. They're not just an email address that you share between 500 different, accounts, and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm like, got 500 emails from Laura Ingraham. I'm like, okay.
I was going to say, I literally, as soon as you said like, you have to take care of your audience. And it's like, I just almost said 5 different media outlets that are so hyperbolic. I'm just over them. We'll talk about it afterwards. I'm not ready to burn all of my media contacts just yet. But I do think that there's a reality for all political fundraising right now that we're overheated, and there is a discretionary budget problem in America. Like, say what you will, I know I went to Costco. I got like 5 things. It was $100. Like these are rough times for a lot of people in terms of just free money, of vacation money, fun money, that kind of stuff. If you're not struggling, you're definitely seeing a restriction in that. And so, and also it's like, yes, we are in the ramping up period, but this engine's been hot for 8 years. I mean, 9 years, really, when you think about when it first started. We've been on the edge of democracy for so long, we're starting to wonder exactly how unsure this footing is, because we've certainly had a lot of screaming and yelling about it.
It's like, like 18-year-old me with a first car, I'm just like, I'll just keep pouring oil in here. I'll take care of it, What's an oil change? Never heard of that.
Exactly.
We need an oil change right now.
But for a lot of that, the natural talent that Trump brought in terms of that activation, in terms of those conversion rates, in terms of the list building,
Yes.
I think that's gone. And if that's gone, then we're probably going to see a bit of a leaner campaign from him, irrespective of any of the legal stuff that is happening right now. And some of that is obviously on a macro level that nobody's ever seen before. Like, there's a lot of coverage today that he can't get a bond secured for his $500 million payment that he owes. But also, who else is looking for a $500 million bond? Like, you can't go to Max Cherry from Jackie Brown and throw a bag of cash on his desk.
Yeah.
Like, when has anybody ever heard of this? So, I don't even know what to make of that.
In Baltimore, they used to have it, when I was younger, I'd go out to the bars a lot, and they used to have the pens. It was yellow and hot pink for big boy bail bonds. I mean, everybody had those pens, every bar you went to, and it's like signature. I'm like, I think about that now. I'm like, can you sign a $500 million check with that? Like,
right?
I don't think it was designed for that.
Big boy bonds. The radical left Democrats and their friends in the media. They've done it again. All right, Tom LoBianco, 24 site. That is number 4 site on Substack. And you guys are expanding. You're doing podcasts. Tell us all about it.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin. 24site.news. We got our domain name mapped. We've got some business emails mapped. I've been working on that for quite a while. Turns out starting a small business is a little bit tough on the...
There's a little bit more than you initially think, isn't there?
We got a podcast we just fired up, the 24 Site Pod, doing a lot of original reporting. My colleague Warren Rojas has been diagramming the Senate and House Republicans who have yet to endorse Trump. I will tease that... we've got something interesting coming. We've got something you might hear about pretty soon that will raise some eyeballs. And I guarantee you there will be a hard paywall on that story. And we're doing it all. $5 a month, $60 a year. It's myself, Warren Rojas, and Pilar Belendez-Deshay in support of journalism. We don't have to hold up a hedge fund anymore. We can hold up ourselves.
No. Yeah. Funny enough, when you take down the overhead, some of this money spreads a little further. Who knew? Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Justin.
Politics is written and hosted by me, Justin Robert Young, for Dog and Pony Show Audio in Austin, Texas. If you want to thank our good pal, Tom LoBianco, you can by heading on over to letter X, 3, guest.com. Find and follow and share video clips of this show. TikTok, for now, Justin R. Young. Instagram, Justin R. Young. YouTube is politics. Send me an email, theyoungamerican@gmail.com. Hit me up on Twitter. The show is at PX3Tweets. I am at Justin R. Young. You can follow me live on YouTube and Twitch, as well as X. px3live.com is our Twitch. And you can share this podcast with your friends, family, and clergy, px3podcast.com. Hit me up with a one-time donation, paypal.me/payjury. Venmo is Justin-Young-20. Cash App is PX3Cash, and you can send me anything you'd like in the mail. P.O. Box 153184, Austin, Texas, 78715. Of course, the only place that you get our bonus content is TakePoliticsSeriously.com. $3 tier gets you 2 bonus podcasts per week covering all the news I miss on our free podcasting schedule. And this is the season to do it. Just saying. But of course, you get all that, plus your name read at the end of the show at the Titanic $10 tier, including Sam, John, Niemeister, Edwin, Invoke Gloria Young for King of the New World Order, Brian, Edison, Jeremy, a dog named Checkers, Sarah Jeannie, Spider, Matthew, Dr. G, Dustin, Brad, D. Laser, Nick, Just Another Pilot, The Jen, Alo, D. Reilly, Andrew, Lisa, Fat Tony's PJs from New York, Devon, the CFP, Gloria, my mom, Gray Zone, Peapaw, Jay, Neil, Ye Old Pinball Shop, John, TP4 Bongo, Neil, his nerdiness Charles, Audrey, Stole Adler's Spot, Darren, Idris Arslanian, Berkeley, Steven, Nomadic Terran, Molly's Delightful Demeanor, Adam, Chief Andy, Robert Casey, and Paul. You want your name right at the end of the show? Well, only one place to do it. TakePoliticsSeriously.com. On our next free episode, that will be Friday of this week, we will be joined by former Border Sector Chief Chris Clem. It's a real dude who really patrolled the border for over 20-something years, damn near 3 decades. He's got a lot of thoughts about what he saw then, what the role was, and how things have changed. It's a really good conversation. You're going to want to be here for it. Till then, this is your old pal Justin Robert Young saying some shows talk about politics, others talk about politics, and still more discuss politics. But this is the only show that dares discuss. Ow! 3.